Bronco, you set this schedule up so the players would have a full 9 weeks with Frank. How would you assess that 9-week period? Did you accomplish what you wanted to?
I think we did. I'm trying to figure the best way to frame this for you. I wasn't quite sure where the current team would be starting from, and so I was guessing that an extra couple of weeks would be beneficial. What I've learned, and what I have learned relatively quickly, is this team is not resistant. They're eager and they're hungry. I didn't know really where they would be, but I've been really impressed with how hard they want to work, how willing they are to embrace the level of detail that we've asked for. And I really have been impressed with their desire to embrace the concept and the principle of just earned, not given. And I've asked them to do some things that are pretty extreme, with not wearing Virginia gear and no numbers for practice. But it's interesting because our team simply seems to want to know what standard it will take for us to have success, and they're trusting me that I'm setting that standard for them. And because of that initial level of trust, they're working really hard and matter-of-factly believing that if they do this, we will have success. And so through the 9 weeks, I think what's happened after that commentary is I think we're establishing trust. I think we're establishing fitness. I know that we're establishing unity amongst the team and chemistry. And I think we've set a great foundation for now the opportunity to practice.
On that topic, are you surprised at how quickly they've embraced it? Did you sort of have plan A and plan B for
Sure.
if they were resistant?
Sure. And there wasn't anything for me to base the resistance on, but I've experienced that before. And so certainly I was going to over-prepare and over-plan rather than under-prepare and under-plan. And I think my original thought was that I would have to fight harder for initial credibility, and that right from the beginning it was just matter-of-factly, this is going to work. What do you want us to do? And that approach and that mindset has just allowed us to gain momentum quicker and establish progress faster than what I had expected. And it was a pleasant surprise, and that would be not only for myself but our collective as a coaching staff. What we still need to work on is the grit and resolve and determination and execution and mindset through doing really hard things to reach confidence. That's noticeable to me, that this team, through doing hard things together, we are certainly becoming a really close team, which I think there was a nice foundation of that to start from. That stops short of confidence, and we'll earn that step by step through spring and through summer and through a fall camp.
You have to manage it all. Right now you're in the off-season winter workouts. Then you've got spring. Then you've got preseason before they get to see, quote-unquote, a reward of some success on the field. Do you have to manage that?
I really don't think so. From this standpoint, I just finished meeting with every single player. It was the first time I was able to do so. And, man, I haven't coached a team yet where there were so many of the same responses in terms of how much better it feels, how much more they're enjoying it, how much more fun they're having. And it's hard, but we love it, and it's what we were hoping for. And so there are tangible rewards already in place. And the players, from our first tempo runs of the horn going off and the finish line being here, to some not even halfway done, to well over 90% of the team having qualified to go into spring practice, there's changes happening not only physiologically in their bodies, but psychologically in terms of we can do this, we will do this, and it's going to happen. And that, so I think those tangible things, and I think they are tangible, are happening every single day, and the players know that, and they recognize it in each other. The other thing that's really fun in terms of a tangible outcome is we had a number of players that had not qualified for spring practice, and they were given an opportunity Saturday prior to us starting, and unsolicited. I'm not sure what percentage of the team, Jackson might be able to comment on it, or Matt Johns. I think you talked to him, but I'm going to guess, I don't know, 80-ish% of the team or more showed up to support the guys that hadn't made their times, and the guys that then qualified. There was dogpiling, and it was like a fans charging the field after a win, of support from our current team mates and team members to players that were still battling actually to practice. So if you put it in the context of these guys are fighting like crazy actually to get to work harder once they put on gear, and that's the paradigm shift that I'm hoping. Football is supposed to be the reward, and it's supposed to be an amazing experience, and that happens with success, and so we're building into that. And there's some pretty tangible things, which I think was your question, that are showing up along the way that are really fun.
Yeah, when you spoke to us on signing day, you talked about your initial feelings about Matt Johns. He was in here earlier today talking about stopping by coaches' meetings, watching BYU film, dissecting it and all that. Any more thoughts on him?
I have really, really been impressed with Matt as a leader, not only vocally, but by example. And he's around the office a lot. I love my staff to be accessible. My staff and I like each other. We're friends. We love the players to come around and be with us. And Jackson is sitting in the back as well. And I would say Jackson and Matt both are leading not only, again, by example, or vocally, which is hard to do. Sometimes saying the right thing at the right time is not easy. It takes courage, but both of them are doing that. But man, they are working so hard, and really are showing that this desire to for this program to have success. They want it bad, and I'm just lucky to be here at this time because I feel like I can help. I want to help, and I'd love to see them have success. And they're doing their part to this point.
Bronco, I think I have an idea, but what is a tempo run? Is it a timed run that somebody's got to get through to practice?
Yes. So the team is divided into different segments. So Coach Wintrick will say bigs, which are O-line, D-line. Then there's a combo area he calls front seven, which would be linebackers, tight ends, fullback, body types. Then there's skill, which would be defensive. He calls them outside the box, but defensive backs, receivers, speed backs for us, H-backs. And each has a different distance to go and a different time to make. And they're not easy. And some of the greatest celebrations and successes, I think some of these, at least in my personal interviews, said they've never felt as exhilarated as making their tempo run, which to me is an amazing thing because I love asking players to do hard things and then seeing the success and the satisfaction and who they become by doing hard things, and then asking to do more the next time. And so again, if you put it in context, which I think is the main story here, they're actually making tempo runs and diving at the line so they actually can practice, not playing a game. That means just participate in a spring practice, and wait till you see how hard they'll try to play in a real game. And that's usually why the team plays so hard and so tough and for so long, and not perfectly, and we certainly have flaws, but they will try hard.
Coach, because everything is so different for all these guys, Matt said that you're not looking at a single play from last year. Everything that you're looking at is from BYU and everything that you'd like to adjust. How will you evaluate through a spring practice? Because I imagine your evaluations might be a little different than the practices that you've had at BYU over the last couple of years.
Actually, the practices I intend to make more difficult than the practices at BYU. And survival of the fittest would be a good analogy. I'm not interested in what's happened before. I'm interested, and I've been at almost every workout, mostly just observing, saying very little, but just watching in my own form of personal interviews where actions tell me more than words. And I have a great idea who I think will be the leaders, who I think will contribute, and at what level. And so as we go into spring, I'm anxious to see a position mastery. Eventually, what I'm more interested in, my philosophy is will before skill. We're going to be developing the grit, determination, and resolve in every practice, even before there's a skill being developed. And so There's plenty of time to me for the position mastery component of it. That then precedes the execution, which is 2 or more players doing the right thing together. That then leads to execution, and eventually doing that kind of during the fog of war, to steal a term from John Wooden, is competitive greatness. And so we'll eventually get to that. Right now, I just want them to try really, really hard.
Coach, was your bowl game, was that the greatest example of the kind of resiliency and grit that you're talking about? The way you came back?
Man, I'm not sure it was the greatest example, but it might be the most proud of any team that I've coached. I mean, I've never been part of being number 1 down that far, or seen the kind of a start of a game like that. But at the same time, again, literally behind me, and I could hear it, and I think the score was 35-0, and one of our players saying, we've got this. I was wondering if they were watching the same game. But there was just sense of resolve that they knew they wouldn't break, and they might not win the game. They might not win the game, but they absolutely were going to gain momentum, and they completely took over the game as time went on, not only emotionally but physically and through execution. And man, I walked off the field, and if you looked at the body language of the teams and how I felt inside, it was one of the greatest gifts they could have given me as the coach, is to watch them battle like that, and smiling and laughing. And maybe at some point I'll show you the sideline on a play that was made in that game, and then ask you to see what your prediction of what the score was at that time by watching the sideline react. And this team will be the same, and that's the culture that I love, and I love to create that. And that gives you a great chance to win, and you're never out of a game when you'll play like that.
Saw where you made a position change in your staff the other day. What went into that?
Yeah, learning more about our current team and what they need, and looking at the resources we had to match what the need of the team was. And so I thought I had a good idea of what this team would need as I took over. After 3 months, those needs shifted a little bit, meaning that the needs were always there. I just got a clear idea of what they were. And what I know has to happen is we have to become dominant in the interiors, and that's O-line and defensive line. And to practice the way I'd like to practice, to develop the physical presence that I'd like our team to have, and to play with the edge I would like us to play with, that has to happen from the interiors moving out. And Coach Ruff and I are really intertwined in terms of philosophy on developing that. He has experience, tons of experience in developing not only really physical players, but that mindset. And not only in the short term did it seem like the right thing, but in the long term, not only coaching our existing players, but with Coach Ruff, he can go head-to-head with any staff, any program in the country, and we have a great chance to add other defensive linemen. And so that was an increased emphasis, putting my assistant head coach with the defensive line. But then also, our program is fairly intricate defensively, and Shane Hunter was with me for 6 years, either as a player or a coach, in the position at inside linebacker. And so it then started to make sense that he might be able to help them learn more quicker and help us establish a faster tempo and get up to speed quicker. And so it made too much sense not to make that switch within the 3 months that I saw.
So you think it will help in recruiting?
For both. Coach Ruffin he might be the best recruiter that I've ever come across, and maybe the best person. But his reputation is nationwide, and I don't believe that there's a defensive lineman in the country that their eyes won't light up if they know Coach Ruff is their coach. And so again, the program, while we have great skill, I like our skill players here a lot. What I think this program can use is a continued shift in mindset of becoming dominant from the inside out. It appears to me that we'll gain access and have easier access to skill players than the depth we really need to become dominant in O-line and D-line. And we have good players now. We need more of them, and we need more emphasis on them. So Coach Tujay and Coach Ruff, they're going to do a great job. And this will be the launch point for establishing momentum to get that part to where we can compete at a national level.
Bronco, do you think it's likely that as you get to know these players more and actually work with them on the field, that some will be moved to different positions?
Well, there's certainly a chance for that. There's a couple moves that are kind of pending right now. Numbers for the spring always kind of dictate that, which spring is not the fall. And so while it is very important, a lot of times you have to manage spring practice slightly different because the depth isn't what you're going to have in the fall in terms of numbers. But certainly, maybe a defensive end could become an outside backer, an outside backer could become a defensive end, or a tight end might become a fullback. Those things are fairly normal. A running back sometimes can become the H, which is the slot. Those things are fairly normal. And sometimes a big safety can become a Sam linebacker or a nickel. Those things are pretty standard. So I think you could see any or all of those through the spring.
I guess this will be our first chance to ask these type of questions. Any major injuries heading into spring that will take anybody out?
There hasn't been any that have happened in the off season, and I don't have my list in front of me to tell you existing players that are have injuries carrying over from the fall into now. I know as I look at the Crucible group that are our injured workout group, there's still a handful over there. I can't think of names to pass on to you now, so I'll have to get that to you when I have this stuff in front of me.
And you mentioned the no numbers thing last week. How do you, when you scrimmage and stuff like that, and how are you identifying players on?
Good question.
Like a stupid question, but how do you kind of figure
So
that
I've
out?
watched them enough now where I think that I'll have a pretty good idea just by how they move. Good luck to you if you come to watch us. That might be one of the best reasons to just see. So there'll be tape, nice name tags on the front of the helmet, but you have to be close enough to see them, which you guys probably won't be, but who knows? No, I think it's a small trade-off to make for the idea of unity, and before we can do anything as a program, there has to be this idea that we really want to do it, and this team is showing that they do want to do it. They are willing to do it, and they'll have a chance to choose their number and make their mark on our program and what they can give when fall camp ends. So it's still a long journey, but I think what we'll all find is we're going to see guys that want to try really hard when they play the first game.
Guy keeping stats at these scrimmages is really excited about that too.
I'm curious personnel-wise, and stop me if you were asked this when I stepped outside, but you had bigger backs at BYU, and here's Smoke, Hammer, or maybe smaller, faster. Does it change what you want to do with them, or do you view them as players who can do what you did at BYU?
No, we're not really. BYU is just a starting place. I mean, a really skilled teacher takes what resources they have and then does what they can do. And so there's a starting place within the system, and that's really what our team has been studying. But it might look something like that, but our idea is to really use that only as a starting point, and then whatever our current players are best at, that's what we'll end up highlighting. And we think we have a really good running back. We think we have a really good quarterback. I like our line. I like our tight ends. I like our receivers. So depth is the biggest issue at this point. But I expect to do things we haven't done before, and I expect us to do the best of the things we've done before that fit with what the current personnel is.
I believe you said when you were introduced that you had met Tony Bennett briefly before that.
That was my second time meeting or talking to him right there since.
Oh, really?
Total.
So any observations? Obviously, they played very well, but
yeah. Any
similarities you've seen in the two of you?
It's a tough question. I would like to think so, but I can tell you what I've noticed from him from afar in only 2 quick conversations. His teams play very hard. They play very disciplined. They play great defense. They're very poised, and they're never out of any game. And it seems like they're unselfish. It seems like they're unified, and it's a quality organization, and it shows through their consistency. And he seems to be someone that's not very animated on the sideline, really poised and confident and calm. And that's there's some. I've been called more stoic. I think he smiles more, but we're similar in that regard. But there's all kinds of work that I'll have to do here before I can be compared that way at the University of Virginia, because he's already established that, and we're just beginning. But I've really enjoyed watching his teams, and I admire him.
Anything else before we cut this guy loose to go to we'll get you two guys, and then we'll let Coach get over to a staff meeting.
Do you feel like you'll go into spring? Will you come out of spring maybe with as many questions as you go into it, just because it'll be the first time seeing them, or do you feel like you have a good handle on personnel-wise what you've got?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty good handle right now, actually, of what we have. I like our team. I like who they are first as people. I like who they are chemistry-wise and how they support each other. I like how they work, and they're gonna play well. That's what I believe, and spring will establish and help us continue to move the program forward. But I have a lot fewer questions than what I thought I would at this time when I was hired.
Kind of along those same lines, but is there one goal or maybe a handful of things that you really want to get accomplished over these spring practices? Just say when you're done, we got this done.
I think that, and you might get tired of hearing me say it, but again, what I care first and foremost about is how hard they try. And we're not going to play football until we try really hard, and they've grasped that, and they're doing a nice job with it. And man, if we get to be really good in terms of our position mastery and execution and try hard, holy cow, we'll be way ahead. And so I would say if it would be in that order, though. We'll try really hard as a group, then they'll develop their skill sets individually, then they'll do it collectively, and the meter will stop somewhere or move somewhere along there through the spring. But if we get to the execution phase through the spring, we'll be ahead of schedule.